There I am. All right, what's up, guys? It's me, Kevin Allen, your boy. I'm gonna attack some MMA lineups here for UFC on ESPN 9. We're gonna use the Domination Station Optimizer to set up an attack mass multi-entry contest. You guys are asking questions already. Set up an attack mass multi-entry contest on first DraftKings, first DraftKings, and then Fanduel. We got live sports. Love MMA. That's my shit. And so welcome everybody to the live stream. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to show you my technique for setting up the dummy. This card is unique, and I really, really love it for the purpose of, yes, yeah, new glasses. Yeah, I got a bunch of new glasses. It's Rona glasses. It's when you order them online, you don't even see them on. What's up, Dave? 20 lineups all in on Elliot Rodriguez and Kenny fights while full fading 5 players. Yes, that does seem right. So here we go. Here's what we're going to do. This is a unique card where there are some extreme chalk or what I think are high likelihood fights of scoring well. And I just want to reference my sheet here because how do I know what's a good fight? Well, we got this little fight rating, fight exposure tab right here, right? Fight exposure, 5-star, 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 5-star. What does this tell you guys? We got 1, 2, 3, 4 fights with 5-star exposure ratings. That means I'm going to get like 80 to 100% exposure to the fight. And then I'm just going to mix them out. Now, not every card is like this, and there is some danger to this approach because you might miss out if Caitlin Chookagian puts up a big number. We're going to fade her. Or you might miss out if like some surprise happens, for example, like Vince Morales knocks out Chris Gutierrez. We're done. But this is an approach that will reduce the number of variables in our lineups and give us a much better chance of hitting that nuts play. So let's jump right into this thing. I've broken down this entire card already. We've got our high exposure fights already pointed out right here. You got my winner picks, but a lot of times a winner pick, it doesn't matter. We're just using the win odds. The Domination Station provides us with the win odds. So let's get right into it because I also need to show everybody how this is done. It's very, very important. There's techniques to it. So let's start with MMA on the Domination Station Optimizer, Woodley versus Burns, right? Now, there are two numbers that we use. We have fantasy points in a win, expectations, and also our mean projection. So why are these two things important? Yeah, yeah, that's right. So remind me which ones I'd skip. There were some I'm still researching and I'm still not sure on. If I don't feel confident, it's hard to really... so Alex is asking, can I go over the fight? I have a couple of fights that I still haven't quite fully filled out in the notes. That's because it's really close. I don't have a strong lean like on the main event as well. So we'll get into that. But more important, again, is fight exposure. It's much more important than which fighter you're picking. We want to know the fighters that will score well when they win. So that's what fantasy points in a win here is designed to show you. I'm not fully confident in this measure as of now, but it gives you some ideas. Like Tim Elliott, if he wins, he always scores really well. Billy Quarantillo in a win scores well. Spike Carlisle scores really well in a win. I actually don't agree with Burns being somebody who will score very well in a win, but you also see some low numbers here, like Brock Weaver. Again, don't know if I agree with that, but there are going to be fighters that don't score well. Like where's Shevchenko and Chookagian? Low scoring potential fighters in all different regards. And we'll just go over this stuff better than worrying too much about that. But the most important thing to note is which fights are all in fights. So let's start with Casey Kenny versus Louis Smolka. If you just use the mean projection here, you're not going to get an all-in situation. So here's what I'm going to do. Don't be scared to do this. See what I just did? I just set both fighters at 120 points on their projection. Now, you might be like, that's fucking crazy. What are you doing? No, it's not. Okay. Now, Casey Kenny got a 58% ownership projection to Smolka's 16%. This is a card with interesting ownerships, and we're going to leverage that a little bit as well. But I want to be a little bit over on Smolka, so I'm going to set him to a max of 20%. Now you might say, why did I just do it where Kenny, the more expensive guy, is less? Because what's going to happen here is we're going to get when a cheap guy is projected high, he will absolutely show up until the max that you allow. So I've set a 20% exposure max on Louis Smolka. We always use tournament mode here. So what will happen is I'll wind up with 20% Smolka and 80% Kenny. Now, this is an all-in fight for me. I will have 100% exposure to it because, and I don't need to really go over it, but because Smolka fights always produce massive scores. His style of fighting is just very conducive to him or his opponent scoring extremely well if they win. Okay. Who are the other all-in fights? Daniel Rodriguez, I almost don't even need to adjust this, but I'm going to. He gets 120. Gabriel Green, if I don't have, I'm going to have a few lineups without Rodriguez. So we'll put Gabriel Green in those few lineups here. He's projected for 4%. Let's give him 10%. That's going to get me about 90% D-Rod. I might, go 85 just because he's going to be so high owned anyway. But, he's projecting for 75%. That's bananas. All right, let's keep looking. Tim Elliott, Brandon Royval. Elliott is a scoring machine when he wins. He has an implied win probability of 60%. So I'm pretty cool with going with that. Give me 60%. Okay, Brandon Royval, 39% implied win probability. It's not bad. It's pretty high. So Tim Elliott's fights produce big numbers, both for him and his opponent. Now, Royval's fighting style, not probably going to get a lot of takedowns, could get involved in scrambles, but I think he's more about a throw up a submission. If he's going to win, he's probably going to do it by throwing up a submission or knocking Elliott out or beating him up. So I'm not 100% convinced that he's in the nuts. So I don't want 40% Royval, but I will go maybe 30%. Very high exposure fight. Keep going. Another heavy exposure fight. Quarantillo, Spike Carlisle. This is an action fight right here. It's interesting that Quarantillo is projecting for 40 fantasy points and 40% ownership, and Spike Carlisle is looking at 26%. I think if Carlisle wins, he probably gets a knockout. I love the potential for scoring in this fight. So once again, we're going to set these guys at high numbers. And now we're going to control for the exposure to the fight. Let's say Quarantillo, give me 55%. Quarantillo's dangerous. If he loses, he's probably getting knocked out early. So I want more than the field on Spike. Give me 40% here. Again, only leaving about 5% spacing. Did I forget a fight? No. Okay. Now we give it our first run. We're making 150 lineups for DraftKings right now. So we give it our first run. Now you're like, hey, what have you done? You've changed projections arbitrarily. Yes, I did. Because it's irrelevant. We're trying to go all in on a few fights here that look like they're going to score really well. And then let's see what the tool does for the rest of it. And then we'll work our exposures that way. But my feeling is if we are right, and if these fights are the highest scoring fights, then everything else will just come together naturally. Now, what about Vince Morales? Kevin, you said to fade Vince Morales. That's right. So we're getting way too much of this guy who is a fade. I don't want 35% exposure, so I'm going to lower that projection. Actually, you could just set a max limit, maybe 10% Morales. That's about as much as I'm comfortable with. I want to be under the field. So let's say the field is 17. I'll go 8% there. Okay, Smolka, I like. Roosevelt Roberts, interesting. I'm getting all this Dern, not enough Roberts. I don't mind it. I think Dern gets a first-round submission in her fight. Why do we adjust the fantasy point numbers like this in MMA? Because we are targeting fights and exposures to fights. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Alex. So when we say go all in on a fight, it's irrelevant what the projection is. Projections are irrelevant. I've said in this card, there are some fights that stand out. Again, let's take a look at the cheat sheet. Fight exposure, right? This means, for me, I'm predicting these fights will score very well. So my goal is to have as few variables as possible. I'm trying to reduce the number of variables because each lineup gives you 6 variables. Once I've loaded up on Daniel Rodriguez 90%, I've eliminated it. I've gone down to 5. Now, if Daniel Rodriguez doesn't have a good fight and he loses, all right, we lost all our money. Okay, we accept that, right? That's DFS. That is how you attack these things. But if he does win, great. Now we're only dealing with 5 variables, not 6. The 6th one is a lock. So we've essentially eliminated the 6th variable. So if I have 2 more all-in fights or 3 more, now those are 50-50-ish variables. So it's not nothing, but we're saying, okay, these 3 fights, we're going to have one or the other guy in every single lineup. Again, reducing the total number of possible lineups that we can create, which leaves us just mixing and matching in these final 2 spots. Trying to win a tournament. That's how it's done. The fewer variables, the better our chance of hitting the nuts lineup. Also increases the possibility for ties, but whatever. Each card is unique. This card is uniquely interesting in this way. When has a Tim Elliott fight not produced a good score? It's pretty unusual. So here we go. So again, I just did a run. I'm getting 85% D-Rod. Kenny at 79%. Elliott at 60%. We can go a little higher if you guys want. Elliott's going to get a lot of takedowns. That's all he does. And advanced positions. If he wins, he's going to score massive. But so does Quarantillo. Does the same thing. If he wins, he's usually going to score really well. That's why I'm above the market on him. Mackenzie Dern, that's fine, but I'm not going to go that high. Spike here is 40. Morales, okay. So I'm Sakai, Woodley, Smolka, Roberts. Blagoy is borderline a 0. I'll lock him in at 2. Antonina, 2%. Caitlin Chikugian, 2%. Gabe Green, that's fine. Jamal Hill, going to get a little more on this next run. So notice what I'm doing, guys. Pay close attention. First of all, Royval needs to be in a lot more lineups than he is, so we're going to raise this number to 85. I want him all the way up to this 30% exposure. Actually, we could change that to 100. Okay? Now, pay attention to what I'm doing here. I'm not setting every single min and max on every single fighter all at once. I did a few of them just now. We're going to run it again. The reason I'm doing that is I want to see what the maximum number of possible lineups really even is. So as we set limits on certain fighters, what's going to happen is another fighter is going to start popping up a lot more. And each time we do it, it's going to produce more of some other guys. And so we're really trying to look at that and understand what is the effect of setting a guy to 0. Here's another fighter I don't want really any exposure to, but we'll go 2%. Hannah Cyphers. She's showing up way too much. Jamal Hill, I don't mind. We're going to raise our exposure to him. Brock Weaver, we're going to raise that exposure up a little bit. Antonina, Blagoy. All right, so we're getting closer. That's it. We're going to look at our exposures and try to get them where we need so that we're loaded up. This is the technique that I'm doing right here, is to design to load up on the fighters that I think if they win, I don't know who's going to win. All right, let me explain something. These are the odds right here. Every single one of these numbers represents an implied probability that we can bet on. In the domination station, those numbers are shown next to the fighter odds. 75% win probability, 24%. The win probabilities are spelled out for you. It's right here. You have your ownership projection right here. If a guy has a 24% win probability and he's going to win, if he wins, he'll score well. But just a 10% projected ownership, you can get leverage by raising your exposure on that fighter. So I'm going to change his number to 35. Why? Because if he's projected at 10% ownership, and he's got a 24% implied win probability, and I think that if this guy wins, he'll score really well. He's super cheap. I want to be over the field. Similarly, if somebody who I think is terrible and has no chance of scoring well, Blagoy Ivanov. Why do I think it? Why? Am I a fucking savant of MMA? No. I just look at what this guy does when he wins. He doesn't do shit. How do I know? DraftKings is kind enough to provide us with the information. 34 points in a loss, 87 in a win. Not bad. 66 in a win. 5-round decision, only 26 points. So in Blagoy Ivanov's fights, even against a really bad opponent like Ben Rothwell, who's not good, or Tai Tuivasa, who's not very good, he's only getting decisions. And it's a miracle against Tuivasa. He needed a knockdown and 2 takedowns to get to 87 fantasy points. Now, 87, not going to do it. Not going to do it. So I don't want a lot of exposure to this guy. Now, what am I saying when I reduce my exposure all the way down to 2% from 14 field? What I'm saying is I accept that if this guy comes in and smashes this dude and puts up a massive score, I'm dead. My night's over. It's done. But you can't cover every possibility. So that's why you have to take some stands in some spots. Keep looking. Run it again. Every time I change an exposure, I'm going to run it again. And the reason I keep doing it is because every time you reduce one person, somebody else starts popping more. So you fuck around too much, and it goes haywire. You don't want to do that. You got to see what happens when you mess with one. So here I'm still getting a lot of Casey Kenny. I want Smolka in my non-Kenny lineup. So to make sure that that's happening, it looks like I've got 20% Smolka, 75. That's a little bit of space left over. Let's take a look at the implied win probability for Louis Smolka. Again, if he wins, he's going to score very well. He's got about a 30% to 70% implied win probability. So I should probably raise up. I don't like Smolka in this spot at all. I've got a bet on Casey Kenny, but this is DFS. You got to hedge your shit. So I'm going to go 23%, partially because I also want to be significantly over the field on a guy that I really believe will score well if he wins. So that's how it's done. I want Kenny in every non-Smolka lineup. I just do. I think one of these two is going to be in the nuts. So I'm approaching the card this way. We'll talk about, when we do FanDuel next, we're going to talk about some next level shit, which is basically some scoring things that FanDuel does that really can give us an edge as well. So let's continue to look through our exposures here. This was pretty easy because we've got, all right, here we go. This is more Augusto Sakai than I want. Why? Again, Blagoy Ivanov never seems to lose. First of all, Sakai doesn't do that much. Yes, he's got a knockout finish in his last fight, and he beat the snot out of Vanilla Gorilla, Sherman. And of course, no one really scores that well against Arlovsky. So the book is out on Sakai. The thing of it is, Blagoy, even against Junior Dos Santos, he's just a tough dude. He didn't get knocked out against Dos Santos. He's got a couple wins. I think Blagoy is too tough. I don't think he gets finished. If we look at the inside the distance prop on this specific fight for Sakai, it's not spectacular. Plus 340. Handy dandy. 22%. He not only would need to finish inside the distance, he'd have to do it pretty quick, like first round. I don't like the chances of that. So with Sakai, first of all, I'm going to reduce his projection down to 50, and I'm going to limit him. I'm going to call it 10%, maybe 12% of line. I want to be under the field, under. Okay, we run it again. Each time I make an adjustment, I make one adjustment and then I run it again. Because I want to see the effect of that adjustment. So I just made an adjustment. Let's see what happens. Gilbert Burns exposure shooting up a little bit. That's fine. I don't mind having a little bit of Burns here. I don't mind having a little bit of T Wood. I think the overall exposure or the projection for T Wood and Burns is just too high for the type of fight that it might be. I think T Wood is more likely to get takedowns. This too. All right, Clitson Abreu, yes. Jamal Hill, okay. Chris Gutierrez, another guy I don't want a ton of exposure to. He hasn't shown that he can get a finish, so I'm going to lower him to about 5%. We'll go below market exposure. Gabe Green, sure. Morales, okay. And all right, we're getting there. Another run. Guys, if you have questions about the fighters, what I'm doing on the Dom station here, you can, if you're watching this live, for those of you who are watching live, you can post them in the chat. I can see your questions. So just post it in the chat right here in YouTube. YouTube is the only one I can see. So right here on YouTube, I'll answer them. In the meanwhile, so we've done another run, and let's take a look at our exposures now. We've got 85% D-Rod. Casey Kenny up to 70%. Tim Elliott, 65. Quarantillo, 52. Quarantillo's scary because I feel like if he loses, it's because he's going to get knocked out by Spike in the first round, where he'll deliver a 0. Roberts Weaver. I'll talk about Roberts Weaver in a second. You're right. I did not fill out that one because I've been looking at tape all afternoon on Roberts and Weaver. I want to believe in Roberts. I want to believe in Weaver. I'm not sure yet. Cody's asking. I'm doing 150 right here, Cody. You see I've got 85% D-Rod. I've gone as much as 100%, even on 150. Depends on the situation and the confidence and the price. I don't want to go 100% on a guy that's the most expensive fighter on the card, unless it's a fighter who's a lock to put up a massive number, like Gregor Gillespie in any fight he's ever in. Or anybody who's going up against Louis Smolka and wins. All right, so how much exposure should I have for Roberts? Right now, I think that Roberts is not wildly different. I think Mackenzie Dern is a better play, for example. If you look at Roberts' fighting style, it's not the most conducive to scoring well. Over 2.5 rounds, fight goes to decision, minus 155. It's not great. It's not great. Mackenzie Dern, I mean, that's the question. It's like Dern or Roberts. So if you look at Mackenzie Dern, she's got a pretty good inside the distance prop here. Under 1.5 rounds, minus 130. So Mackenzie Dern stands out as a better play. Right now, Eric, I mean, you know very well, the most important thing is the technique and the fight exposures, but I do think you can cover a lot of bases on this card with maybe even just 50 line. I'm going to do 150 for sure on the minimax, but I'm not sure what I'm doing in the 150K to first. Not sure. But what I want to cover is, so Mackenzie Dern. So on paper, the play is better. I see some things in Roosevelt Roberts that concern me. If this was anybody who was any good that he was facing, I would be comfortable kind of fading Roosevelt Roberts. He seems a little skinny. He seems like he's going to be like a smaller guy. Yeah, right now that's where I'm at this moment. I might level it a little bit more. Let's take a look at. So the other thing we want to look at there is ownership projections. He's projected what you just said. Roberts is projected for 25% with Dern at 50%. So there is some leverage to be had by going a little bit higher on Dern, on Roberts. Dern doesn't always score that well. I mean, she seems like she would, but she's got the submission prop. But, outside of Amanda Bobby Cooper, when she went up against Ashley Yoder, it wasn't that good. She wasn't going for that many takedowns. She wasn't getting them. She does not have a long history of smashing at this level. It's danger. So we're running lineups for MMA. Right now I'm doing DraftKings. Next up, after this, we'll do a Fanduel run because Fanduel's totally different. They have a different scoring system. There's the captain position that we have to account for. Been crushing. I love that. And what you're saying is correct. You don't have to call the fights. We're not that much better than Vegas in terms of determining a fight winner. I wish I was. I wish I was. I wish you were. I wish I knew somebody who was. Because if that was the case, we make a lot of more money and I'll just bet it. But we're playing fantasy. So we're just looking at probabilities and everybody's got a shot to win any fight at any time. That's how MMA works. There's a reason why you don't see minus 1,000, minus 2,000 type favorites in MMA because it's a fist fight and somebody get knocked out. They come in, they had a bad day. You never know. They don't look themselves out there. Look old, slow, like something changed. They haven't been training well. You don't know what happens. So that's why you got to hedge these things. So it's more important to understand which fights will score well, or at least try to predict that. So Mackenzie Dern, if she's going to be 50, maybe I'll go 40%. Maybe I want to be below. This is the kind of fight where you might want to be a little bit below the field. But let me take a look at the rest of these exposures here. Again, Tim Elliott, when he wins, he scores massive. Casey Kenny, man, I loves me some fucking Casey Kenny. I almost want more here than what I'm getting. So I'm going to go 127, see if I can raise that up a little bit. Eric, this is a bit of like, well, I think I must be hitting every single kind of Kenny lineup, which is why he refuses to kind of go well over 70%. I think I've got Smolka at 25, so there's like a 5% gap here. Maybe I'm hitting all the iterations. I don't know. If Casey Kenny wins, he's going to score massive. If Tim Elliott wins, he's going to put up a massive number. If Quarantillo wins, he should put up a really big number. And the same with Spike. This one is the scariest one, which is why my exposures are kind of similar. Burns, going 5 rounds. I don't think Burns is going to have a good score, but he could get a finish. Royval, yes. T. Wood, fine. Roosevelt Roberts, we're going to raise that up a little bit. 68. Brock Weaver, if he wins, he's going to do well. His fighting style will score. Klidson Abreu and John Mahal Hill. What do we do with these two? Klidson Abreu's path to a big score is a finish. That's it. He doesn't have volume. He doesn't have a lot of takedowns. He's not that style of fighter. So I'm going to take a look at his inside the distance prop just to get a sense of this here. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight because you've got a striker in John Mahal Hill. You've got a grappler in Abreu. John Mahal, not much of a finisher. And quite honestly, Abreu's pretty tough. I don't know that Hill is going to finish him. So I don't think Hill is really set up for a big score no matter what. Fight goes to decision pretty high. Abreu submission plus 340. That's a prop I like. If you want to bet a prop. This is a prop I like. Plus 340 Abreu by submission. Abreu inside the distance plus 235. Hill inside the distance plus 473. So let's understand this real quick. Abreu plus 275. We've got about a 26% implied probability there. Again, you remove the VIG and you're down to about 21%. Hill was plus 450. That only gives us 18. Remove the VIG, about 13%. So without an inside the distance finish, these guys are not going to score enough. No way. So with Abreu, I'm going to set him limit to 15%, and we're going to go 10% on Hill. In the meantime, Gio's asking, what do you recommend for beginner MMA players like myself? 20 lines max? Yes. Or it depends if what your comfort zone is. FanDuel has a nickel game. You could make 150. FanDuel has a quarter game. You could make 150. DraftKings has a mini max. You could play for $1. It's $150. That's maybe a lot. There are on DraftKings multiple iterations of 20 max contests from 10 cents, 25 cents, $1, whatever you want. Any one of those is good for MME. And then try to do a single entry. Put your best lineup forward. What's a single entry? Somebody asked me earlier how to do a single. You go with your leans. Like I have a sheet here, right, where I put down in writing who I think will win each fight. Right? I put it in writing every week. Most of the time, I'll get 9 out of 11 right. And even with 9 out of 11, that doesn't mean you make money in DFS. But most 8 or 9 out of 11, I've been pretty consistent. Sometimes it's horrible, sometimes a little more. I don't think I've ever gotten 11 of 11 or 12 of 12 right that I can remember. But maybe you say Geek doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's a football guy. Okay. Big Marley has a sheet. He tells you who he thinks is going to win each fight. This guy is someone that people pay for his betting picks, and they pay a lot of money. And he's been making money for years against the books. That's very hard to do. Yes. All right. So Cody's asking, who would I fade? Again, Cody, I put out a sheet here, a cheat sheet every single week. And one of the nice things I do is if I want to fade a fighter, I write fade. So like Hannah Cyphers is a fade for me. Here's another fade. Chikoigian. Vince Morales is pretty fade worthy. Blagoy Ivanov is a fade. So I write that out for you guys so that it's there and you can reference it. Let's see what everybody says here. You know, one of the nice things, we all kind of have this information up. And here, Chikoigian, fade, cash, right? Who's fadeable? Marley's fading green. He's fading Morales or Gutierrez. He's kind of fading Morales too, fading that full fight. Chikoigian, fade. Shevchenko, fade. Marley's got Cyphers, and Brock Weaver is a fade. I don't think you fade Brock Weaver. I want to get a little exposure to him. So we write this stuff out. Okay, Gio's asking about stacking fights in cash and MME or GPP. There, if you were to, and Luke's saying no, there is if you needed to stack a fight, it's definitely not the main event. The fight I think I might stack would be Elliott versus Royval. Like if I needed to stack, that would be the fight I'm going to stack. I'm very convinced that the winner is going to score really well. We don't fade all the chicks, Eric, but we are definitely fading Shevchenko and Chikugian. And I'm going to show you why. These two are allergic to scoring well. And I'm going to, even Shevchenko, 2 takedowns. A win against one of the most hittable female fighters in MMA, Lee Jian Kim. She still only put up 76 points. Here's a second round finish against Puds. Submission win, only 81 fantasy points. She doesn't score. Chikogian is even worse. The only time she ever had a great score, and it was a bullshit situation, was against Irina Aldana. And that was just, the Fight Metric people artificially inflating her strike numbers. She does nothing. Look how many fights she has. Okay. Win 53. Win 83. Okay. Win 64 against Romello Borello, who's terrible. Win against Alexis Davis, 61. Took the L to Jessica I. Fine. But if she gets that win at 30, that's a 63 pointer. Here's a win against JoJo Calderwood, 71. Maya, 67. She does nothing to score. I'm so comfortable. She might be playable in cash. We talked about Chookagian as a cash playable person. The reason is she's going to get you 65 to 80 strikes landed probably in a loss. So Chookagian, 50-50 fight here. Don't know if she's going to win. I flip a coin. No clue. I think she's exactly the same person as Shevchenko. Exactly the same. One of these two are going to win a split decision. If you think you could predict it, good on you. For me, I'm not able to. So all I can say is, what are they going to do if they win? This girl's going to score 80 strikes and a 30-point bonus. She'll get you 70. If she loses, she'll get you 40. That's a cash play because my floor is 40 points. I'll take it for a pay down under 8K. But I don't want her in my GPP lineup because 75 points never wins a tournament. Or I can't remember when it did, especially not at 7,700 and especially not this card. Yeah, consensus. I look at it too. I want to know. So he says about on the cheat sheets. Of course, I like to see who Sniper's on, and Marley and Eric. Right, Sniper is a lot of times on somebody that I'm not, and it always makes me a little bit interested. So you look at these winner consensuses too, and you could say, all right, but this is not the only thing you need to look at. That's not the only thing. I might. Yeah, Sakai. So when you see all of us on one person, though, that person's probably going to win, or they're a heavy favorite. Gio, I am actually going to say on this card, the ones that I'm telling you to split, I would split. If you want to go all in on Elliott, for example, I don't have any problem with that. Or all in on, even more so on like a Kenny, I'm fine with it. But I think we've already reduced so many variables that I think you're good to do it however you want. This is, D-Rod, yeah, just go 100%. Maybe Kenny 80%. And by the time you've done those two spots that high, there aren't that many other variables. So we're going to mix through these here. All right, so let me see where I'm at exposures-wise. I probably have more Woodley and Burns than I even want, but whatevs. Yeah, see, I'm starting to get to the point where I have so many restrictions. Look at what happened here. Actually, let me rerun this and see if this is real. At some point, you have so many restrictions that it starts to just ignore your max limit. So let me see if I've gotten there. And that once I do that, I know, all right, I've got too many fighter restrictions. Yeah, there it is. See, Smolka is giving me, is important. I've gotten to the point with my limitations where it's starting to essentially turn off max limits. Put too many max limit restrictions on the different fighters on the card. It's because it's too many. The restrictions are too many. All right. Better way to do this is to lower projection 149. This is why, Eric Hoff, you probably don't need 150 because I'm starting to squeeze in lineups that I don't even think are any good. Do I really need almost any Antonina Shevchenko? Probably not. Do I need a whole lot of Chris Gutierrez? Really, no. So I'm just lowering some of these to also try to stop getting exposure to them. I'm going to have to raise some of these up just a little bit. So I'm going to have to figure out where I'm comfortable getting a little bit more exposure. But let's keep running this. This is just about done. How long into this are we? We're 40 minutes in, and we've pretty much created what I think is a great distribution to attack DraftKings today. Now you can play within these realms a little bit. If I raise her up to 100, maybe I'll stop getting as much of that resistance. Yeah, no matter how much I raise up Kenny at this point, projection-wise, there's just no many. I've hit every iteration of lineup that I can do with him, which is wild. $25 milli, man. $25. Little expensive. I got to win something along the way if I'm going to go crazy on that one. Roosevelt Roberts, okay, yeah, 69 even. It's fine. I don't love Roosevelt. I really do like Dern a little bit better, but I mean, there's a reason why one's higher owned than the other. It makes sense. Let's go 33% on Royval. I'm just going to raise it up a little bit. If Elliott loses, Royval is going to score well. Kidson Abreu, if he wins, he's going to get a submission win. Jamal Hill, I'm going to raise up that a little bit, but I really don't like this fight. Morales, I'm trying to lower my exposure here. Blagoy, way too much Blagoy. Just lowering those projections to try to get it to where I need it. Shevchenko, I just don't want much of that. I don't want that smoke. I don't want none of this. Uncheck you. I unfriend you, Hannah Cyphers. So this is what's going on. We're trying to build 150 with extreme restrictions. I'm getting where I'm right where I want to be here. Probably too much Morales, probably still too much Gutierrez, but you know, I'm not going to bitch about 8% or 5%. This is where I want to be. We're good. How do you upload your lineups to DraftKings? Here's how it's done. Download 150. Now this is just uploading it. This is not normally how I'm going to do my lineups, but I'm just going to show you a real quick way, and then I'm going to essentially reserve my content. Later on, I'll actually do this again as I finalize what I'm doing. But here we go. Let's just upload the lineups. The lineups are there. Had I not made a few lineups already, I like the lineups I made. Not worried about it. But had I not made a few lineups already, I would have just reserved and then edited, but I don't want to go through the whole edit process. I'm fucking busy right now. So I'm trying to show you Domination Station stuff. So here's the dollar game mini max. I'm going to max it out. We're done. Now, Eric is fucking calling me a piker because I didn't just throw these in the $15 600K showdown. You have to be so cruel, Eric. I will be in there. Don't worry about that. I'm not ready to do it right now. All right. Let's move on to Fanduel. Fanduel works different than DraftKings. So if there's no more DraftKings specific questions, I want to check out Fanduel here. Number one, because I'm interested now. Well, even before I jump over there, Fanduel, DraftKings, you motherfuckers just added a new captain slot format. Whoa, DraftKings making changes. What the fuck you doing? The fuck you doing, DraftKings? Didn't give me time to build an optimizer for this shit. Yeah, my DKNG, man, I made more money on that than I've made on DFS in a long time. You know, I'm up $30,000. Like, yeah, baby. All right, so check this out. In 3 days, what is it, like 2 weeks? I don't even remember. I feel like it was just yesterday we were buying that shit. That's why you got to be in the Geek Speak channel. So we've been talking about DKNG stock since it was 11. Every one of you guys is in the Geek Speak channel because you guys, if you're here for this live stream hanging out with me, you're like, you know who I am, probably. Like, yeah, let's talk. I love to talk shit. I'll talk about anything. I'll talk about fucking anything. You want to talk about riots? I'll talk about that. I got opinions on everything. Opinionated motherfucker. All right. What's this? Captain format. You serious, Fanduel? I can't optimize for it because they just introduced it like an hour ago. So let me stave off that question about if the domination stations can be ready for this shit. Now, I almost could load this onto the Dom, except we can't. Yeah, Zyhan's my guy. You know it. That's another thing. Geek Speak channel special. Learn about the Zihan. Different than the Zohan. I like the Zohan and the Zihan. Two different reasons. Check out the Zohan. Check out the Zihan. All good stuff. All right. Luke, my man. He's in the Geek Speak channel. Hell yeah. And I know you got that DKNG stock, man. All right. So let's just take a quick look at this. Captain format, they changed the price of D-Rod, so he's no longer a freebie. Doesn't matter. Still a good play. But essentially, in this format, we want to get the highest. If Elliott was on this, he would be my first choice. He's not available. Quarantillo. Spike. Roberts or Dern are candidates. And D-Rod. That's it. That's who I'm going to scroll through. And the reason I mentioned that here is we're going to go over to Fanduel, and the format is similar, except without the penalty of... I'm going to make lineups right now for fucking Fanduel, okay? And I'm going to load them up because it's $50K to first. It's $888. I'm not Eric Hoffman. I don't fucking like putting in 250 lineups for $15, $25. I'd rather do it for $888, take first place. So I've got a couple of really big contests here. Now, let's say you're like, Geek, fuck you, you rich motherfucker, talking about maxing out the 888. I ain't shit, but I'm saying some people are like, yo, fuck you, I can't do that. There's a nickel game, 5 cents. Everyone can play this. You want to go a little bit bigger? There's a quarter game, 25 cents. That's $37.50 for 150 lineups. Here, it's like $1.25. What's first place in this? $100. Get a Benjamin. You bet a nickel, you get a Benjamin back. You know what kind of parlay you need on your sports book to turn 5 cents into $100? I don't. I'm sure it's big. So these are the 3 big contests. These 3 are worth attempting a lot of entries into. Luckily, I'm not gonna fuck with this screen right here. I've got it open, and I'm gonna leave it open. I'm gonna open up a new screen. I'm gonna open up a new one. We're gonna go after FanDuel. So reset. Take a breath. Take a drink. I like that. Put 88 into the 888. It's a nice round number, like 88 in the 888. Like you can't stop at 80. You got to go 88 in the 888. I'm going to have 150 in the 888. We're going to build them right now. So FanDuel is different from DraftKings because they have the MVP position. And more importantly, the MVP position does not have any penalty whatsoever in terms of paying more salary. So the only thing we're trying to figure out is who is a proper MVP. Now, there is some differences in the scoring system that we have to understand. Very important. What's up, Eric? My Friday's good. I just had Mexican food. A little heartburn. Okay. A little heartburn. I had a burrito. Rules and scoring. Here's the deal. What's different about FanDuel? Submission attempt. 7 and... Wait, that's on the MVP side. Don't look at that. Let's look on this side. Submission attempt. 5 points. That's worth just as much as a takedown. In another site. Takedown defensed. 3 points. and decision wins are nerfed a little bit compared to inside the distance finishes. Those are our parameters. But the biggest thing here is takedown defense, 3 points. Submission attempt, 5 points. You know what? Let's do it this way. I'm going to show you a couple guys. Let's take a look at my favorite fight. And I'm just going to show you the stats because fighters that go for a lot of takedowns will produce a lot of takedowns defensed for their opponent. Hofbrau's is spot on. There are no sharks on FanDuel in the cheaper contest. Can't get in there. I'm fucked on FanDuel in the sub $10 category. And is it $10? It's 10 or is it 5, Hofbro? Let me know because I got priced out. I tried to do, like I was fucking around last week. I did the nickel and I'm like, yeah, I'll fucking max this and the quarter. And next thing I know, I was out. I couldn't do anything else. It was like max of 200. And I wasn't sure if that was under 10 or under $5. Yes, the Dom station will not allow you to put a fighter against another fighter. Part of the way I designed the Domination station is to help avoid doing stupid shit. We don't want to have donkeys in DFS Army. That is for other sites. So while other optimizers don't have that or force you to figure it out, we've just got it built in. Now, when you want to actually stack a fight, because that has won on occasion, it's unfortunate we can't do it. I don't have it set up for that. And it's only one on a rare occasion. But if you're going to stack a fight in a GPP, you should be able to hand build like 5 lineups that way. And that's it. Never do a lot of that. It's extremely rare that would work. You can hand build that shit. So here's a fight. I want to show this one fight here. Now, we don't have stats for Brandon Royval, but we do have stats for Tim Elliott. This guy's going for 4 takedowns and 1.2 submissions in an average 15-minute 3-round fight. I believe Casey Kenny will also show extremely. Kenny is my favorite. So let me start by saying that he is my favorite captain. Where is he? Here we go. Here's my favorite captain. Look at this. Now Smolka going for submissions, going for takedowns. Kenny defending it, going for his own submissions, going for his own takedowns. Smolka fights just produce a ton of scoring for whoever wins. So here's the situation. I'm going through my captain tab here, my MVP, and I'm trying to figure out who is going to be allowed to be MVP. Who do I love? I love Casey Kenny in this spot. Set him to 15%. I'm not sure yet what my final percentages will be. I like Louis Smolka. If he's in the lineup, I kind of want him to be the MVP because he scores well. You know? Here, fantasy. Look at this fantasy points in a win, 152. Like these numbers are crazy. So look at the numbers. This is in the captain spot, but like these are big numbers. Fantasy points. So if he's in here, if he's in the lineup, I kind of want him to be the captain. These guys, no chance. I'm going to uncheck them. Okay, look what I'm doing. Uncheck you. Uncheck you. Uncheck you. Uncheck you. Uncheck you. It is 10 and below. Motherfucker. So I knew it. This is what happened to me the other day. So basically, I need to do my 888s, my 150, and then I could fuck around with other lineups. Thank you for letting me know. That's important. All right. We're unchecking people, guys. Uncheck you. Could Klitz and Abreu? I don't know. Spike? Yeah, okay. Sakai. So here's the deal. I've just removed 7 fighters from contention in the MVP spot. I'm leaving Brock in there because he could get a lot of takedown defense. There is a path to Brock, who sucks, but there is a path to him. So let's run 150 right now and just see what happens when we leave it without too many modifications. I like to see what happens. We're going to make a lot of changes, though, in the flex tab as well. But first, I want to control a little bit for the MVP spot. So I set a few guys to 10% min. We'll work with that a little bit more here as it goes. No, this happened to me, Eric, last week. I was trying to just enter like the nickel and the quarter and like little cheapy games and shit. And it was like, you can't get anything under $10. And I was like, what? I couldn't even enter the real contest. I was just dicking around, like kind of doing something like this, just testing the Dom. It was a bad scene. It was a bad scene. All right, so here we go. Left to its own devices, these are the exposures I got. Now, I want a little bit of Quarantillo. I want a little bit more of Spike. So we're going to do that. D-Rod is a great play here. I love D-Rod. Here's one thing I was talking about earlier. People naturally want to play the most expensive fighter in the MVP position when you're doing it manually. So Dern will have a ton of exposure as MVP. It's just something of note. Now, let's control exposures in the flex. I don't want Antonina. She doesn't do anything that scores well. I don't really want Morales. He doesn't do anything that scores well. We're going through the same kind of thing here. I don't really want Blagoy. He doesn't do anything that scores well. Chikogian doesn't do anything. Why is Kenny so low? I mean, what kind of fucking bullshit ass projection is that? I don't even know. So, I mean, like, this is just ridiculous. So, jack that up. The reason his projection is this low, to be clear, is because the optimizer doesn't know that he's facing Louis Smolka, a guy who gives up a ton of fantasy points to their opponent. All it knows is what Casey Kenny did in his first 3 UFC fights. That's all it knows. So understand, this is one of the reasons why a lot of people ask me, like, hey, can I just like blindly run the optimizer here? It doesn't really work because fights, the opponents change. It's a different sport than others. Look at his, oh, he's got no fucking logs on Fanduel. Oh, fuck Fanduel. Go to DraftKings. If you look at his previous fights, it doesn't look like this is a guy who's going to score well. I'll show it to you. Not this captain. I need the regular. So I'm going to show this to you. When you look at his fights, you might be like, oh, this guy doesn't score well. Casey Kenny. Where is he? Yeah, 64.3 average score. His 2 wins, 88, 83. You're like, eh. Who did he do that against? Borg, an elite wrestler. Bermudez, an elite wrestler, and an elite submission grappler, an elite grappler. Marab Dawashvili still landed 45 strikes. So he hasn't shown that. That's the reason why his projection is low. But we know that everybody who fights against Louis Smolka does really well. So we're going to raise that up to reflect that. Okay, where's the rest of this? Yeah, Antonina, we don't want her. Quarantillo, I like him. Of course, I like these guys. So we're going to run it again here. It's mentally resetting because we did the DraftKings before. Need a mental reset here. All right, so again, my MVP spot, okay. Elliott, love Elliott in MVP. Gonna have him maybe 30%. I want to jack this up. I want a little more Quarantillo, 15. Got to make sure we don't go over 100. D-Rod, 50. I mean, there's a lot of potential going 15, 30, 60, 70, 85, 95. We've got most of it covered here. I don't want Tyron Woodley here. I don't want John Mahal Hill there. We won't get them in this run. The Rona. Yeah, 250 with MMA. No wonder I ran into it. Guys, if you're not noticing, if I'm doing something too fast and you're not understanding it, let me know. D-Rod. I don't need that much D-Rod. I'm thinking more and more about this. FanDuel scoring is going to favor grappling significantly. It also favors the early finish. So D-Rod, his advantage is he could get a very early finish in this fight if he wins. Tim Elliott, if he wins, he'll get 7 or 8 takedowns along the way. But his biggest advantage is advanced position. When he gets you down, he's very active. FanDuel doesn't score for that. FanDuel only wants to score for submission attempts and the takedown itself. So that actually nerfs Elliott just a little bit. Dern will go for submission, but she's not very active in submission attempts. Smolka, if he wins, is going to do some damage. Carlisle, if he wins, it's an early finish. Casey Kenny, he's fighting against, again, Smolka, and you always need the guy going up against Smolka. They score huge. So, all right, we're getting a little bit better here. Let's take a look at our fighter exposures. We've got 85% D-Rod. I don't even know why it's not 100. A lot of Dern, a lot of Tim Elliott, a lot of Casey Kenny, Carlisle, Sakai. That's a lot more Sakai than I want. Let's limit him to 10%. T Wood is fine. Smolka, there we go. That's a lot of Brock Weaver, but whatevs. Quarantillo, let's raise that up a little bit. 65 here. Klidson Abreu, okay. Cyphers, I don't really want any exposure to her. Royval, we're going to raise up. Let's go 50. Morales again, and Blagoy, we don't like. So this is it. Hill doesn't grapple, and Abreu does not grapple a lot. He'll go for like one takedown, and there's a decent chance that he'll get a submission early. So that's fine, but that doesn't lead to a massive score. I'd say Abreu, though, like Mackenzie Dern is of the similar note, except I think she's got a much higher chance of actually getting a finish. Abreu, he'll get a takedown. I don't know. Abreu's just not that good. He's just not that good. He's not that good. So he's not an active takedowns guy. And Jamahal Hill just gets right back up. I actually think Jamahal Hill can score a lot of points defending takedowns. I think I'm trying to look at fighters who might get a lot of takedowns defended points. But no, I don't really like Abreu to score really well. So let's take a look at this here. Let me sit back. Let's see where we're at. D-Rod, 100%. With, some flex exposure and some MVP exposure. Tim Elliott, I really still think that Tim Elliott, if he wins, should be the Nuts captain, MVP. So I might raise this up a little bit. I'll raise that up a little bit. I don't need a lot of this. Smolka, if he wins, is borderline also a lock to be the Nuts captain, which is crazy. But I mean, I don't know how Smolka is going to do anything here. It's way too much Smolka here in the flex. I'm going to limit his flex exposure. making some adjustments, which will adjust for my exposures just based on my changes to the scoring. So basically, every lineup has Daniel Rodriguez in it. Now, you might say, Kevin, what about maybe we should hedge some of that. We can. If I'm hedging some of it, that means I'm going to force his opponent, Gabe Green, into a couple lineups. So I can do, like in the flex, let's say I want to have some green exposure, set at 5%. That'll give me a little bit of a hedge. Now, again, this is all in the context of we've already broken down this card. We've already established which fights we think we're going to score really well. So, like, we know that. I think Brock Weaver, if he could stop takedowns from Roberts, I actually think he could score really well. It's interesting. Like, if he gets a lot of submissions defensed, I think he could put up a decent score, even though he's a massive underdog. We don't care what their win odds are. The only thing we care about is how many points will they score if they happen to win. So I'm just like clearing that up. Yeah, this is way too much Mackenzie Dern for my taste. I'm not 100% convinced that she'll be the highest scorer on this card. I'm going to limit her to 50%. Want more Elliott than this? Less of them. More of him. More of Smolka because I just think he is the GOAT. We run it one more time. Guys, any questions? Just pop them in the chat section, man. That's what the time is now for. Just hanging out, talking. Like, what do you guys think? What do you think of these exposures? Am I missing someone? Should I go heavier somewhere? Let me know. So I can look at this two different ways. I can look at the flex tab, but I can also look at the all tab, right? And this gives me a much better idea of like my total exposures to each fighter. It's way too much Klitz and Abreu. Like, it's ridiculous. I'll go 10% just in case he can get the submission. Run it again. Let's see where we're at. I just keep doing this over and over and over again until I have my exposures about where I'm comfortable. For some reason, Quarantillo want to show up. Keep raising it up until he does. Royval. A lot of Gaby Green. I think I'm running out of actual makeable lineups here. That's what I think is going on. Again, I think we're starting to hit every possible lineup. Yes, they're working with the 25-foot cage in this card, which should lead to more finishes and more action. Less room to run. The smaller cage is a huge difference in the funness of watching fights as well. It's a lot of Brock Weaver, way too much. I'm going to limit him to 20% here. Do we have him in the MVP at all? No. I don't mind getting a couple of Brock Weaver MVP lineups. We'll give him 2%. Where else are we here? Yeah, I got a lot of Spike, a lot of Billy, way too much Brock. We'll deal with that. A little more Louis Smoka than what I want, about 30%. It's too much. That's a lot of Burns. It's a lot of Woodley, but you got to own someone. John Mahal Hill, Gabriel Green, Clidson Abreu, Sakai, Morales, Blagoy. Yeah, I mean, we're looking pretty good here already. MVP. Let's take a look at our MVP exposures. Yeah, we got a lot of Tim Elliott. If he wins, he's going to score well. Trust me. Kenny, same deal. I'm actually going to raise him up to 20%. I love this dude. That's 25, 45, 60, 70, 80, 90. And it's just going to float. I guess it's going to want to use Dern for the rest. I'm going to uncheck Tyron Woodley. I think Roosevelt Roberts is at least worth a couple of percentage points here. So we'll do that. Dern is the dangerous one. If Dern doesn't get a quick takedown submission, which he could do, it's still under 100 points. I mean, we're getting a fucking shitload of exposure to Dern for someone who's not known to score well. So I'm going to rethink that exposure, you know, as I continue to look at this card. I get that she's the biggest favorite, and that's a big reason why she's going to show up everywhere. But, like, you know, she's not a lock to have this great score. I'm going to lower that a little bit. Notice what I'm doing. I'm raising up the numbers on some of these people I want more exposure to. I think Brandon Royval scored the same or more than Dern if he wins. Matter of fact, I think he can score more than Dern if he wins. Unchecked her. So we start to run out of lineups. Anyway, all right, you get the idea. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to end it here, guys. We're making lineups on Fanduel. We're making lineups on DraftKings. We're focused on fights that will score really well, and then adjusting our exposures based on win odds, inside the distance odds, which we could check on bestfightodds.com. And then, of course, use our odds calculator over at Sportsbet Army under Tools Odds Calculator to get the implied probabilities of things happening, like inside the distance finishes. It's a lot that goes into this, but this is how you take down a tournament. Go heavy on spots that you're comfortable with. And, I need to think through. FanDuel's such a new format. I really haven't played enough of it to like fully grasp it. But this gives you an idea of who I think are all viable potential captain plays. Don't ask me who's a captain play. They're all here. You see pretty much where I'm going with exposures. I want to get both sides of the Elliott Smolka fight. I want even less Dern than this, so we're going to go 78. But I want to have some Dern. I want some Quarantillo, Spike, Smolka just for the hedge. I'll get some Weaver just for the hedge. Royval for the hedge as well, 54. I'm going to raise that up. And then all of these guys are much less interesting, so we're going to not have too much of them. Here's the main event. I mean, I got 20%. It's not bad. But beyond that, I mean, like John Mahal Hill, he's just not somebody I think is going to score well. Klidson, he might get a finish, so okay. Sakai, I don't really see him scoring very well. Morales, I don't see him scoring very well. Gaby Green, I guess, not really. Blagoy, 45. I don't see him scoring very well. Chikogian, hell no. I don't see her scoring well at all. So all of these things are important to Cypher. I don't even want any exposure to her. Even if she wins, it's not going to score. Um, you never know, but we're trying to reduce the number of variables so that we hit that nuts lineup. Need first place. I need first place in order to make this worthwhile. If you're going to enter, all right, let me finish with this. If you're going to enter this contest, 50K to first, understand what's going on here. Up until top, 300, you're really only doubling your money, like a double up. 6,000 up to about 300 is, it's 15, it's 18, it's 20. It's like double up. Okay. 26,000 entries. You got to be top 300 to do better than doubling your money. So that's not good because our entries are going to be all spread out throughout the curve. Right. So it's not a good scene. You need to get lineups in the top 100 at worst. Even that, $30, $40. You need a bunch of them up here to have some shots at the 50K. If you put 150 in here and you don't hit first place, especially with the technique I'm using now with a lot of hedging, you're probably going to lose money. You got to get first or second. You got to be up here. You're going to kind of like have a top 10. I would say you pretty much need a top 10 lineup in there to not lose money. And that's top 10 out of 26,000 entrants. So it's hard to do this. And this is why I really actually recommend doing it in the nickel, in the quarter, because your risk is so much lower. All right, guys, let's end it there. Good stuff. I'll be around, always doing more research. I'm not done yet. I will finish out, Kanger, my picks. I still want to look a little more into Weaver and a little more into Roberts. I'm just having some issues with that fight and trying to really grasp it. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Good luck tomorrow, everybody.